Is the US government unique in its sort of sitting back and letting this happen without stepping in? Are there other governments in the world that are trying to deal with similar issues in a different way?
There are no other developed countries that are having to deal with this problem because it doesn't exist. And the reason it doesn't exist is the United States is unique in terms of having the highest cost of higher education relative to average incomes. The country that there is one country that's sort of somewhat close to the United States, which is Japan, in terms of how much college education costs and how much an average income is. The United States and Japan are the highest. Below the United States and Japan significantly are countries like England and Canada and Australia. College education is less expensive there, but it still is somewhat expensive. The rest of the world, college is dirt cheap. Germany, it's a couple $100s a month. In some German provinces or states, college is completely free. What does that mean? It means students graduate with no debt. If they graduate with no debt, they have a whole lot more chance of living a good life, spending money, than they do in the United States if they're graduating with $30, $40, $50, $60, $70,000 in debt. And the main difference between the United States and Europe is in Europe the government supports higher education. They provide the money, the way the United States used to do. Remember, after World War II, there was something we had called the GI Bill. The GI Bill provided free education for everybody who served in the military. We don't do that anymore. After World War II, in 1965, the United States developed a plan to help lower income students finance their college education. They're called Pell Grants, named after Senator Claiborne Pell from Rhode Island, who developed the idea and passed it through Congress and pushed it through Congress. In the 1980s and in the 1970s, Pell Grants financed somewhere around 75% of the tuition at public universities. So if you wanted to go to school at a public university, remember that was when public universities were dirt cheap anyway. You were talking $1,000 or so. And the Pell Grants paid for 3/4 of that. Your cost was a couple of $100s. And yeah, a couple of $100 back then was not the same as a couple of $100 now. Maybe it's 1,000 or so now. Still, it's dirt cheap for a college education. Pell Grants have now gone down so that they're paying for less than 1/3 of the tuition at a public university. And remember, the tuition at universities have increased significantly beyond anything and everything else, including medical care in the United States. So that the Pell Grants now finance very little of an education at a public university, which means students have to pick up the difference. So the government used to do things in the United States, and that was when the United States grew and developed and became the greatest industrial country in the world. Our standards of living rose, and then the government just cut off funding for higher education, despite all of the benefits it has to the individuals and to the nation as a whole. And we've suffered as a consequence of that. Economically, we've suffered with people now in debt. We've just suffered in so many ways. And remember that $1 million again that everybody gets. The government gets a take of that. If individuals make $1 million extra over the course of their lives because they have a college degree, the government take on that is going to be $200,000, because that's average income tax collections that the government gets, all levels of government, from your income. So the government is losing too. It's a lose-lose proposition.